views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey everybody, here we are for the Bronx Buzz. We're here every Thursday night and we talk to Bronx reporters, do a little round table discussion. Whole idea is so that you can meet the people who are writing in the newspapers and on the blogs and everywhere else about the borough of the Bronx, and also get to understand a little bit about what they think about, what their thoughts are about the Bronx and about the things they're writing about. And today we have two great reporters with us, Robert Christie, who is with the Bronx Times. Nice to have you, Robert.
Thank you.
And also Nancy Asiama, who is one of my colleagues at BronxNet Television. Nice to have you, Nancy.
Thank you for having me.
Nancy is back for a return. Robert is here for the very first time.
First time.
Robert, so let's start with you. Who the hell are you? Where you're from, and let's just get a little background, and then we'll get into how you got with the Bronx Times.
Yeah, I'm from Westchester County, Cortlandt Manor, about 25 minutes north of White Plains for people who may not be familiar with northern Westchester. Also, I went to Stony Brook University and got my journalism degree there. And I still live in Westchester, commute to the Bronx for work. And I started working at the Bronx Times about 3 months ago.
All right, he summed it all up. That's it. Good night. But just to rewind the clock, so you grew up in Cortlandt Manor.
Yes, I grew up in Cortlandt
Manor. And then you went to Stony Brook. When you went to Stony Brook, did you say to yourself, I always want to be a reporter. I'd like to do that kind of
People
thing.
ask that all the time.
Oh, really? I thought I had I can't believe it. I thought I had a great question.
Yeah, no, I've answered it before. It's okay. I always knew that I wanted to do something with sports, and I'm hoping to eventually get there. But I stuck with journalism, tried to stick with it through senior year. I thought about changing here and there, but I said, I'm going to stick with this. And I got specifically into covering community news when I did an internship in my senior year.
Where was that internship?
In Northport, Long Island.
Oh, so you were out there on the island.
So I was out there, exactly.
Yeah.
And the Times Beacon newspapers, I think.
Right.
And so that's how I, got into this. And I feel the most comfortable doing community news. It's more personal. The stories are a little smaller. You can focus on more things. And so that's, kind of how I got into this.
And some of us believe, those of us who do community media, that you can sometimes have, I realize maybe not global effect, but real effect on the communities when you do that. What about covering communities interests you? And then of course extending it to the Bronx, where we have some of the most vibrant communities anywhere.
Exactly. It's been interesting for me to see the different communities. After I graduated, I did some freelancing for the Examiner News Companies, which is a smaller newspaper in Westchester. And then after that, I worked in, I know previously when we were talking, you mentioned North Jersey, and I worked in North Jersey, in Bergen County around the Cresskill, Dumont, near Englewood area. And I was a little bit more affluent, and it was interesting to see those kind of communities and what affects them. And then I came to the Bronx, where obviously they're affluent areas, but things are a little bit different here. And it's just interesting to me to see how local government works, how people care about certain things like their homes at a local level, and care about their school districts, and are going to meetings and interacting with local politicians, interacting with board members, interacting with local officials. And I enjoy seeing that. I enjoy getting every now and then you get an email, thanks for covering our bake sale, thanks for covering our little things like that.
It's really, and I know Nancy is nodding yes, and I'm going to nod yes as well, having covered the Bronx for a number of years. But if let's say you were on I was on a big station, let's say, or you were at a major newspaper, you'd get a million emails, and it wouldn't mean as much as the person who took the time out. And sometimes they take the time out to give you one of these, and we appreciate
we get those
that
as well.
And of course, being at the Bronx Times, really a legendary paper,
Yes,
and
yes,
it's
yes.
well established. So it wasn't like you came into a kind of a new situation.
Yes.
They know what they're doing. and
They
all that.
know, yeah.
Do you cover just about anything, or do you have a specific beat? Or how does that work?
One of the things that we believe at the Bronx Times, or what I've learned that the editors are really focused on, is they don't want to pigeonhole you into one thing. They want to be able to have you familiar with a lot of different things. So if you have a fill-in for somebody, it's a little bit easier. I've noticed that most of what I've covered a lot of housing and real estate stories. If a building is going up here, if a community is against a certain building, if residents and tenants are having trouble with the landlord, things like that. But I've done other things. I've covered the dead body over in Hammock Cove Marina, which was interesting, to different parades and things like that. So there's no exact beat that I've done recently.
And you probably enjoy that, right?
No, it
gives you
yes,
keeps you
it
keeps you
keeps you
awake
on your
every
toes.
morning and gives you something
Yes,
to do
yes,
every
yes.
morning. Talk about that dead body story. I read about it a little bit. And,
Me too. It was
thing.
really strange. So I remember coming in on Wednesday, and we're a weekly
was
paper.
last week.
So we're a weekly paper, so you don't get breaking news all the time. And I believe there had been a robbery as well. So we had to split up the stories. I went over to Hammock Cove Marina to cover the dead body, and apparently there was a couple workers there that found the body. And as the story unfolded, we learned that there was a gentleman who had owned a boat under which sat a crate, and that boat had sat there for a while. He was preparing it to take it out to water, but then he died. There was a little bit of back and forth with the estate, and eventually that estate was given to somebody, and they took the boat away, but the crate sat there, and it had been sitting there for 3 years. And I talked to
And nobody knew he was gone?
Nobody knew it was there. I talked to the operations manager there at Hammock Cove Marina, and he said that they said, I think they had to clean up because there was a car show going to be had at the Hammock Cove Marina, and him and a couple workers decided, all right, let's start cleaning up. They got the crate and they were going to throw it out, but then they were like, let's look in it. Let's see what's in there. And surprise.
I can only tell you this: better you than me. I would not
Yeah.
have wanted to be there or whatever. That's the kind of story you don't get every
And
day.
you don't,
that's for sure.
especially no.
Let's talk about something else that you covered. Excuse me, and we have talked about on this show and on our other show, Bronx Talk, and that is heroin epidemic in the Bronx. I'm a little older than both you folks, and I
Yeah.
remember. Going through the 70s, and we had heroin epidemics.
Yes.
Of course, then it turned into crack cocaine.
Yes.
It's remarkable that we have a heroin epidemic, not only in
Yes.
the Bronx, but throughout the country, really. Just talk to me about what you wrote about and, how you view where we are at as far as this reemergence of something really not very good.
It's interesting. Heroin is probably the only topic I've covered in both this paper and the previous paper I was at, which shows that there's heroin. I think one of the biggest things I've learned that heroin has is not prejudiced against demographics or anything. Because I was in a more affluent area before,
And they have
in
had the
Bronx,
same
and
problem.
they've had the same problems. I heard stories. You have parents who are scared, and more specifically, Senator Jeff Klein and Assemblyman Mark Jonah had held a town hall meeting where they invited different people.
Because if I can interject, because they had a problem in Loretto Park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Specifically, the Morris Park Association was a part of that town hall as well. They did have, I believe, about 3 overdoses or a few overdoses within the last few months in Loretto Park and in the Morris Park community, and they realized that something had to be done. It appears that whenever you talk about heroin, you get a lot of people who are scared because it doesn't appear that there's any reason why people, there's no, a lot of kids. I know when I was at the town hall meeting, suddenly Mark Jones, I spoke with passion. He said he takes his kids very seriously as far as he admitted to even drug testing them at times because he's scared. And I think you saw that with a lot of, people in the audience who are scared and have a lot of questions about this. And the Bronx specifically has had the highest rate of heroin overdoses, death, within the last, I believe within the last year, approximately 140, I believe. I would have to check that number, but I do believe they've had the highest heroin overdoses.
I want to get to Nancy and talk about some of the stuff that she's doing, but we did a show maybe a year and a half ago on Bronx Talk about it, and a drug counseling expert said one of the things that's going on right now is that because pain meds are so expensive, people are then, it's incredible, but they're using heroin because it's a cheaper alternative for pain medication. Which is unbelievable. That tells you something about the cost of our medicines and pharmaceuticals, and also about the availability of an illegal killer substance. It's just remarkable. Go ahead.
I know
Your last statement, and we want to get to Nancy.
Yeah, one of the things, as you mentioned pain meds, that I've heard in both jobs is that there are kids who may, especially if they do sports and they get an injury, they get addicted to pain meds. And then, as you said,
well, this is a substitute.
Exactly.
And one of the things she had said, and I don't want to belabor it because we could spend a whole show on it, is what she had said was sometimes within families, the parents are giving it to the youngsters for that kind of reason. Nancy, let's start with something. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're producing Open once a week, which is nice. Let's talk about a much lighter story. He brought us death and drugs and everything else. But you covered this announcement about Arthur Avenue, one of our most beautiful neighborhoods. Talk to me about what that was like and what really happened out there on Arthur Avenue.
So last week, of course, we got, I was sent out to cover a story, a special announcement by the board president at Arthur Avenue. And only did you know that, Arthur Avenue was named 1 out of 5 of the greatest streets in America. Not just New York or like the Bronx, in America. So, for Bronxites, that was a major thing. Yeah, it was major. And, the board president, spoke really well about the Bronx, took the honors in, and he accepted it, and everyone was excited. And of course, we got to celebrate it and get a little bit taste of Italy. What amazed me about, or what still amazes me about Arthur Avenue is the amount of family and business that come together to make sure that everything stays the same. I spoke with the owner of Mike's Deli, forgot his name, Dave. There we go. And he.
I know Dave because I want a good sandwich every now and then. So that's how I know Dave.
And he told me, and he shared with me that most businesses on Arthur Avenue open 5 days out of the week, 6 days out of the week, and they're still successful. And it's just a combination of everyone having each other's back. And if you're not opening today, somebody is going to open that has the same thing, and they sell the same quality of products. So that's what they've been promoting, and that's good for Bronxites.
I really like the idea. I mean, I know you say there's continuity, and there is continuity with the families and everything else, but the fact is, I mean, Arthur Avenue and the whole area is changing a little bit. I mean, which is beautiful because there are many Hispanic people that are there, Albanian people there, Italians, obviously. And yet, it still maintains that character, a certain R-E-S-P-E-C-T that we have. What maybe a little more serious story you did, and then we're going to extend that into it. We're going to show the story that Nancy did, but we're going to extend that into our buzz of the week, and we're going to talk about housing, was this idea of right to counsel. You are entitled, if you are a defendant, you are entitled in a criminal court to free legal support if you can't afford it. This is a bill by the city council that would allow people who are in housing court to get a free lawyer. Tell me a little bit about that story and what you discovered.
So, first of all, covering this, I was shocked as to how many people have housing issues.
Oh my goodness!
In New York,
or in the Bronx. Don't even start
me. The press conference was scheduled to start at 8 o'clock. We got there to set up 7:45. I mean, it was already started. There were people already
people
on
just
this.
Anxious to do it.
Right. So, hearing different stories about, people getting, threatened by landlords of false accusations and, things that landlords couldn't prove. But yet the landlords are the only ones allowed to come to court with a lawyer, and they can't. So how are you supposed to protect yourself?
And even if you do, you want to bring a lawyer, or most of the people involved can't afford it.
Right.
So the pendulum always, the needle always, in historically swings toward landlords and toward property owners.
Yeah,
in
which is
housing
why
court.
they, majority of landlords usually win the battle when it comes to, going to court over housing situations.
So the status of this legislation, I'm unfamiliar. The status is it is being proposed and considered, or it's been voted on. Where is it at
It's
right now?
proposed and it's being considered. I know the borough president and a couple of local leaders went down there to testify as to why they should let, basically tenants just have them,
legal counsel.
yeah.
All right, so are we ready to show this? We're going to show the story. We're going to get the drum roll. This is from maybe about a week ago.
Yes.
Nancy Asiama at BronxNet Television, and let's let her rip.
Let's pass Intro 214. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were the final words of Bronx President Ruben Diaz Jr. as he joined other city leaders on the steps of City Hall before testifying before the City Council Committee for all New York City tenants to have the right to counsel in housing court.
We just want to equate, have some equity in the on the field where so many of the people who are being evicted and find themselves during homelessness are people who don't have representation. A third of those come from the Bronx.
The bill was introduced in 2014 by council members Mark Levine and Vanessa Gibson to help tenants like Chris Chalfant, who was on the verge of eviction despite having a disability.
The superintendent of our building, who represents her landlord, made false claims against me, and my landlord stated that he had to take the super on his word.
Chalfant did her own research for a month to find out what her rights were as a tenant so the landlord can drop the claims against her. She says the thought of her becoming homeless terrified her.
It was incredibly stressful. I almost had a breakdown. I couldn't sleep at night. I mean, the thought of a person being evicted, and especially if it's wrong, it's terrifying.
A majority of tenants currently appear in housing court without any legal representation, while a majority of landlords do, giving them a higher hand in the outcome. This is why all these New Yorkers are fired up to get this bill passed.
And it would take a load off of their living stress. It would keep the children in their homes and won't break up families.
If passed, the bill will make the Big Apple the first city nationwide to provide low-income tenants with free legal representation. Nancy Asiama, BronxNet.
All right, there we go. A little applause for Nancy Asiama, and a really important story, and of course we'll see how it develops. What we're going to do here on the program, we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back. Our Buzz of the Week, we're going to talk more about housing in general. Both of the reporters have covered it and are interested in the concept. We'll talk about zoning, and we'll talk about all those things. So don't go away. More of the Buzz coming up.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family?
This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry.
Go along, son!
it's always worth it.
Whoa! Master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at with this little face. How could you not love him?
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz, and our guests are Robert Christie from the Bronx Times and also Nancy Asiyama from BronxNet Television. Nancy, let's start with you. So you did that story about right to counsel, and I think it sounded like from our discussion just a moment ago, it was a bit of a revelation for you. You didn't realize, the size of the issues, which we've had for generations in the housing court. What are the things that you see when you go out in the Bronx that make you say, gee whiz, we need to spend more attention on housing and things like that in the Bronx?
And this might be something that we all know, is the number of homeless people in our borough. Not even in just the Bronx, in New York City, period. And for housing to be such a big issue and for people to be suffering from that, I think it's shocking to see how many people are on the verge of going in that situation. As the lady in my package described, she was terrified because if you have to go to bed in your comfortable blankets thinking about next week I might not get this chance. Yeah.
I have actually an anecdote which I could tell you just today that I was doing what I do during the day, and somebody called, somebody who I had done a little interaction with. He actually was a Bronx artist, and he said to me, he says, I'm fighting like crazy because I'm an inch away of becoming homeless. And we were just talking about some of the things that he needed to do to make money. But he was petrified. He was like, if I don't come up with X amount of money, and then you say, okay, well, then you find another place to live. But there's no other place to live that somebody who's not making a lot of money can afford. And that's what the issue is. A shortage of housing, I guess you see it everywhere, right?
I've seen a lot of times, I know that you did a package on right to counsel. There are a lot of times when people come up against, maybe a landlord who's either bad or they're having issues with, and now they're in a panic because they're trying to fight it on their own, and then before they know it, they may have an eviction notice, or the landlord might be, if you get an attorney, you get one that may not be as good or is backed up so much and can't, really help you as well as you can, as well as you would like them to. And I've noticed that there are a lot of time where residents, they get to a point where they really just don't know what to do. And they feel like, okay, if I give in to the landlord here, I may get, a lot of my money may be gone. I might let them, I've been bullied now, so now I feel like, if I let them win, now I have my pride is being taken away. And that's something that I've just seen a lot of. It's unfortunate.
What I have seen in the, I don't do a lot of out in the streets, but I see it in community work and everything else I see, is that, and you really tap right into it, they will allow the fact that they don't have heat or hot water, or their bathroom is not appropriate because it's moldy or whatever it is, because they're worried if they do that, they could get harassed out of that apartment. And the need for apartments is so desperate, so that somebody who will accept that and think that that's even better than being homeless, and so they will take it. And then that person all of a sudden finds either they're harassed or they're out in the street, and it's a terrible cycle. Go ahead.
And if I might add, the tricky thing about housing is landlords know that a person's comfortability is where they live. And once you take that away from them, nothing goes right. You can't come to work thinking I'm having a great day, but where are you going to sleep at night?
Do you think that, now we have the Jerome Avenue study, there's talk about building new buildings on 149th Street, and there's in Community Board 6 there's a new project. Do you have the sense, because people are very worried that those won't be the answers but create more problems because it'll raise prices, and of course a lot of those people on the lower end will have no place to go. How do you feel about the new housing we're seeing and the efforts? And you're going to get the same question, so don't be laughing over
that. The thing about the new housing is, it's been said that it's going to be stable rent and it's going to, affordable housing for all.
I knew you were going there, and I was going to say affordable for who? How many times have we heard that?
So that's what I guess everyone is waiting for, to see if that's really what's going to happen, because you are taking a chunk of our land to build housing that we can't live in, but yet this is where millions of families grew up and raised their kids.
And then on the other side of the coin, don't go away, you're going to get it. On the other side of the coin, you can understand property owners saying, look, if we're going to spend the money to build, we got to make, I mean, you know, this is a business, we got to make something back. So then they're going to need to establish a certain base of income, and that's where the inequity is.
I've done a couple stories where the word gentrification is usually like the big word, and I think I've talked to developers, and you have to ask them, like, what you do realize that there are people who are upset that you're going to build houses and put up, places where they can't afford, people in the same community can't afford to live, and you usually get, they usually give you and I guess it's a fair point that if we, if these people who may be more affluent come to the community, then they spend money in the community.
Well, I have to weigh in on that. The trickle down idea but I would, and I've had conversations with many developers as well. My thing is hire the Bronxites. Make sure that all the people that either work on the projects and operate the stores and manage the stores are people from the Bronx, and then you kind of help build that. You're going to get the last comment. Go ahead.
And I was reading, and it's part of my Bronx updates for tomorrow morning, is that local workers are actually what's the word? Petitioning to get the jobs that are being built in the Jerome Avenue rezoning. So they're like, you're bringing all these jobs and all these houses.
We want the jobs.
We want the jobs.
And listen, we're going to have this discussion the next time you come, because it's still going to be raging. The problem is that the unions that control the jobs, in many cases, Bronxites do not belong to those unions, so those jobs go to elsewhere. And then you need an apprentice program, and these are very complex issues. You guys are great. Robert Christie, you're going to come back, right?
Yes.
Nancy Asiami, you're going to come back, and I'm guessing we're going to continue the same dialogue, because these issues are going to go on and on. Thank you to the Bronx Times. Thank you, of course, to my home at BronxNet Television for having Nancy. And guess what? We will be back for the Bronx Buzz next week. Don't forget, Monday night is Bronx Talk, and we're going to be doing a very special show this week. Or actually, beginning next Monday night, it'll be our 23rd season getting started, and it will be all about immigration. Somebody's written a book about having been incarcerated for being undocumented. Fascinating show. See you next week.
Hello, good people of the Bronx and beyond. Welcome to A Life in Art.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family?
This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry.
Go along, son!
it's always worth it.
Whoa! Master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Oh my God, go!